Nuclear wasteland inside dystopian town blitzed by 450 nukes, plagued by suicides and cancer-riddled families, issued radiation passports. Growing up in the most nuked place on Earth, Maira Abenova has helplessly watched as cancer spread through her family. After years of living near the Semipalatinsk Test Site, she told The Sun how the devastating impact of the radiation did not spare any family. Known as the Polygon, the 7,000-square-mile nuclear testing site in northeast Kazakhstan was nuked by hellish bombs from 1949 to 1989. Having been hit by a quarter of all nuclear explosions in history, Semipalatinsk Test Site was an atomic playground for Soviet scientists which was kept secret for decades. Its infamous atomic lake was blasted into existence 60 years ago by a bomb 10 times more powerful than the one dropped on Hiroshima. And one of the site's most destructive detonations reportedly caused 4 times as many instances of severe radiation poisoning as the Chernobyl disaster. Following 40 years of nuclear explosions which wreaked havoc on nearby communities, the consequences are still felt today. Kazakh authorities dished out eerie radiation passports to help and identify victims of the fallout. But these have failed to fully cover the tragic repercussions. Local resident Maira Abenova told The Sun, "After more than 30 years have passed, we can now say that for 40 years, an atomic war was waged on our beautiful land." Now a mum and grandma, Maira was raised in the neighboring high-risk town of Semipalatinsk, which is by the Russian border and is today known as Semey. She is also the founder and advocacy group for victims of the tests called Committee Polygon 21. Maira detailed the tragic consequences of Semipalatinsk Test Site, which have scarred her own life. In 1971, before turning 60, my mother died of esophageal cancer, she said. At that time, we could not know the cause of this disease. After losing her mom, her sister passed away in 2013, nearly 25 years after the last recorded nuclear test. In 2013, literally a month after surgery, my older sister passed away from breast cancer, Maira explained. Her husband was the next loved one to die as a result of the radioactive fallout. She said, "My husband was diagnosed with stomach cancer. He lived in agony for only a year and a half before he passed away." Maira continued, "Just a few months after my husband's funeral, my brother was diagnosed with lung cancer. He survived only 3 months." The devastating consequences of Semipalatinsk Test Site then caught up with Maira herself. "Last autumn, I was diagnosed with the same disease," she said. "I had an operation, but I don't know how much time I have left. Our medical system offers little hope, not because we lack good doctors, but because the healthcare system, especially in our region, is in a deeply deplorable state." She added, "The worst thing is when doctors diagnose cancer. It's like a death sentence, a sentence of a painful death, without proper help and treatment." Maira also noted that her local cancer clinic was always overcrowded. Kazakhstan authorities estimate 1.5 million people have been exposed to the test site's residual fallout. Nearby populations suffered elevated rates of cancer, heart disease, and infertility, which were all linked to the tests. More babies were born with defects, missing limbs, Down syndrome, and other disabilities, while the number of suicide rates among young people also rose. A local city hall official even made the shocking claim that people in the villages got used to suicides, according to a UN report. And grandma of 2 Maira confirmed this epidemic, saying that after the closure of the site, the higher rates of suicide were known as Kainarski syndrome. Despite the first ever bomb going off on August 29, 1949, for years after the end of World War II, radiation levels are still elevated and children continue to be born with genetic mutations. Maira said, "This evil did not spare any family." Reflecting on these haunting health impacts, she described the aspect that continues to trouble her most. As for the photos showing the aftermath of the tests, I'd say the most frightening consequences aren't the physical deformities or developmental anomalies, she said, but rather the lingering fear, the fear of dying from an illness that might not be visible on the outside, the fear of a young woman giving birth to a child with disabilities, and so on. The campaigner also detailed a closed-off town called Kurchatov, which was built as the headquarters for the testing site and was only accessible with an official pass. Code-named Semipalatinsk 21. The base was full of nuclear scientists and military officers, and located on the picturesque bank of the Irtysh River. The top-secret town had 50,000 or so inhabitants who were all supplied with high-quality produce sent straight from the capital. Meanwhile, locals outside the town lived in relative squalor with empty store shelves, Maira explained. It was built in a short time, she said of the city, which has been dubbed the Soviet version of Los Alamos. Since the city was built by the military, it resembles a military town, strict lines and no frills. The activist added that scientists timed each blast to match the wind direction, making sure the deadly fallout always blew away from their own HQ. And typical Soviet cover-ups meant that even the locals were unaware of the nearby tests for years. We didn't know about it until the late 1980s, when information about the terrible tests conducted near us began to leak out to the public, she recalled. A law created in 1992 meant victims could apply for a radiation passport, which confirmed their exposure to the fallout and qualified them for certain benefits. Each person who had their application approved was given a little beige book with a big blue mushroom cloud on its front cover. Those holding their own document could then receive things like monthly compensation cash and longer holidays. This system was said to have worked in its initial phases. But these days, the scheme is ineffective, according to Maira. She is now part of a renewed push to improve compensation and bring real justice to the lives of many who have been impacted. Maira said, "The law that was passed in 1992 is effectively defunct today, and its current provisions are discriminatory. The passport grants holders £30 per month in benefits, barely enough to cover current medical costs, and those who move to live in a different region are disqualified from getting the money." Many locals have reportedly found it challenging to get official recognition for their children to also obtain the document. Emphasizing the importance of petitioning for better support, Maira explained, "The hardest thing for us is that we feel doomed and unprotected." Maira also heads the human rights organization DOM, which has also played an important role forming initiatives aimed at protecting the rights of victims of nuclear tests. She says on social media that for the last 3 years, the organization has been working to shape new ways of addressing victims, to achieve significant change, and to expand dialogue with the state and the international community. Maira has won awards for her work, supporting victims of the tests, and participated in UN meetings calling for the ban of nuclear weapons. She left Committee Polygon 21 earlier this month, but continues to work with victims of nuclear fallout through her leading role at DOM. It is believed that more than 1 million people resided in and around Semipalatinsk, but today only a few thousand people remain. The International Day Against Nuclear Tests occurs every year on August 29th, the day the first bomb went off in Semipalatinsk Test Site. Despite neighboring locals living through the nuclear fallout of the site, it remains unclear exactly how dangerous living in the region is today. Scavengers have excavated the site in hopes of selling off scrap metal, while locals are known to use the atomic lake as a fishing spot. Maira said she was aware locals like to go fishing there as they have come to believe that it is safe. But since the landscape has been marred by nearly half a century of nuclear bombing, she said the area had partly lost its beauty. "It is more reminiscent of the surface of the moon," she said, "a steppe and granite hills that have crumbled over time, scattered across by the atomic explosions."